Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a sunlit classroom at Greenwood High School, the soft rustling of pages and pencils filled the air. Ms. Margaret Whitmore, a teacher in her 40s known for her arrogance and exacting nature, walked down the aisle between the desks with a condescending smile. Her gaze fell upon Malik Johnson, a 15-year-old black boy, sitting in the back row. She had considered him difficult since the beginning of the year and thought that humiliating him in front of his classmates would be an effective way to set him straight. That day, Margaret had prepared a particularly complex math problem, convinced that Malik would get it wrong. She walked up to him and said mockingly, "Malik, let's see if you understand anything about this problem. I doubt you'll arrive at the right answer." Malik calmly raised his eyes, his tranquil expression contrasting sharply with the teacher's arrogance. He picked up his pencil, carefully reread the problem, and then began to write his solution with impeccable logic. Each step was clear, methodical, and, above all, correct. When Margaret asked the class for Malik's answer, he explained his reasoning point by point, even correcting some mistakes the teacher herself had made in her explanation. Silence fell over the room. The students, usually intimidated by Margaret, exchanged admiring glances, fascinated by Malik's intelligence and patience. For the first time, Margaret felt a mixture of shame and astonishment. She had tried to humiliate him, but it was she who had just been publicly corrected by a student she believed to be inferior. This moment marked a turning point. The teacher's arrogance and prejudice were about to be confronted by the undeniable truth of talent and determination. Malik, without arrogance or anger, had just demonstrated that true greatness is not measured by appearances, but by mastery of one's skills and self-confidence. The bell at Greenwood High School had just rung, and the students rushed into the classroom of Mrs. Margaret Whitmore, known for her commanding voice and piercing gaze. Seated at her desk, she pretended to be grading papers, but her mind was already on Malik Johnson, the bright but quiet new black student sitting at the back of the room. Margaret had heard rumors about him. That boy is intelligent, but he's different. In her mind, different meant weak, naive, easily belittled. She liked to think that no student could stand up to him. That morning, she handed out a complex math problem, a fractions and algebra issue she knew was difficult for average students. She approached Malik, a condescending smile on her lips. "Malik, let's see if you can understand this." "But I wouldn't bet on it." Malik looked up calmly, showing no sign of nervousness. He knew that Mrs. Whitmore had a habit of putting down those she considered inferior. He carefully reread the problem statement, noting each step meticulously, and began to solve it. While he wrote, his classmates watched in silence. Each sensed that something unusual was about to happen. When asked for the answer, Malik explained his solution point by point. Each step was correct, clear, and even superior to the teacher's clumsy explanation. Margaret's face froze. She had orchestrated a moment of humiliation for the boy, and yet, she was the one who had just been publicly reprimanded by a student she considered inferior. The students' murmurs grew louder. "Wow. Malik is absolutely right." Or, "She's wrong." For Malik, it was not a personal victory against the teacher, but proof that respect is earned through talent and perseverance, not through fear or arrogance. Margaret, for her part, felt an uncomfortable mixture of shame and disbelief. She realized that her authority was fragile and that her behavior could soon cost her more than mere embarrassment. The lesson continued, but a new tension had arisen. Malik had shown that he was not a student like the others, and Mrs. Whitmore now had to reassess her attitude towards him, and towards all the students. The next morning, the tension in the Greenwood High classroom was palpable. Students whispered amongst themselves as they watched Malik take his seat at his desk, his expression calm and focused. News of his math performance had spread throughout the school. Even the most unruly students looked at Malik with a kind of silent respect. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore entered, her smile still fixed, but this time tinged with cold determination. She could not tolerate this boy continuing to stump her in front of the class. Today, she had prepared a new set of problems, even more complex and subtle, hoping that he would get it wrong this time. She fixed her eyes on him and said, in an ironic tone, "Malik, I suppose you were very lucky yesterday. Let's see if you can repeat that performance today." Malik didn't reply. He knew that responding to arrogance with anger would only fuel the teacher's anger. He took out his notebook, carefully examined each problem, and began to write, step by step, methodically. Meanwhile, Margaret walked among the other students, giving them insistent looks, as if to remind them that she was the one in charge. But the persistent whispers about Malik only grew louder. Then came the moment when she asked for Malik's answer. In a clear and calm voice, Malik explained his calculations, even correcting a small mistake that Mrs. Whitmore had made when explaining the problem to the class. Every student could see Malik's impeccable logic. This time, Mrs. Whitmore felt something more intense than shame, fear. Her efforts to regain control were failing. Her methods of humiliation were ineffective against the patience and intelligence of a student she underestimated. After class, some students approached Malik to congratulate him. He smiled modestly, aware that his knowledge and composure had spoken louder than any confrontation. But Margaret, alone, brooded over her defeat. She knew she had to think about how she was going to treat this boy, because every attempt to humiliate him only strengthened his natural authority in the class. That day, Malik had not only demonstrated his superiority in mathematics, but he had also planted the seed of a deeper lesson for his arrogant teacher: respect is not forced, it is earned. A few days later, Mrs. Whitmore decided it was time to regain control of her class through public humiliation. She had prepared a complex math problem, designed to trap Malik in front of all his classmates. She entered the room with her usual condescending air and announced, "Today, we're going to see if some of you are truly up to the task. Malik, I invite you to solve this problem on the board." The students' eyes turned towards him, some smiling with excitement, others worried about the scene that was about to unfold. Malik stood up calmly, took the chalk and began to write, without a word. But this time, something different happened. As he explained the first step, he discreetly corrected a small mistake that Mrs. Whitmore had made in the problem statement without realizing it. The murmurs in the classroom turned into stifled laughter. Malik continued confidently, demonstrating not only the correct solution, but also his teacher's error, step by step. The students burst into applause. Some murmured, "She's been tricked." Or, "Malik is incredible." At that moment, the headmistress, Mrs. Eleanor Parker, entered the classroom, alerted by the noise. She observed the scene, frowned, and turned to Margaret. "Margaret, can you explain to me why you are humiliating a student in front of the whole class?" Mrs. Whitmore, red with embarrassment and unable to reply, stammered out a few clumsy apologies. Malik, ever calm, politely explained his mathematical reasoning and showed where the teacher had made a mistake. Mrs. Parker nodded her head in approval. "Malik, your work is exemplary. Margaret, I think you have a lesson to learn here, about respect and humility." For the first time, Margaret felt the true weight of her condescension. She had tried to humiliate Malik, but she had humiliated herself, not only in front of her students, but also in front of the headmistress. Malik returned to his seat, still modest, while the entire class watched him with admiration. The humiliation planned by the teacher had backfired, and the message was clear: talent and patience always triumph over arrogance and contempt. After the public humiliation, Mrs. Whitmore's reputation in the class changed dramatically. The students, who had long feared her arrogance, began to see another side of her, a teacher capable of admitting her mistakes, even if it took time. Margaret, alone in her office after class, thought about Malik. Every attempt to humiliate him had failed. Every time she thought she was asserting her authority, Malik had responded with intelligence, calm, and precision. For the first time, she felt a mixture of admiration and shame. She understood that respect could not be commanded, but earned. The next day, she approached Malik in front of the class. "Malik, I want to apologize for my behavior. You showed everyone what it means to be intelligent and patient. Thank you for reminding me that I still have a lot to learn." Malik, humble, replied with a slight smile. "Thank you, Ms. Whitmore. I believe everyone can learn, including teachers. From that day on, the dynamics of the class changed. Malik became a role model for his classmates, not only for his mathematical skills but also for his exemplary attitude. Mrs. Whitmore, for her part, began to modify her teaching methods, replacing arrogance with guidance, and disdain with encouragement. The students noticed the change, and mutual respect took hold. Malik, who had suffered prejudice and humiliation, had not only proven his worth, but had also inspired a real change in the heart of his teacher. Thus, Greenwood High was no longer just a school, it had become a place where intelligence, patience, and respect triumphed over arrogance and prejudice. Malik had won far more than a math problem, he had sown a lasting life lesson.